Yéay ksatini tekat Johan kleert ke yikach wous tlal yikach wous ye awe yishikach waja ach tuasagu ya gol cajun wujit khatank kaish hidi adat awe atigudi gol atyakohu gol atishihi gol atquitini gol at yi kaiti like atite kaiti gol atite taji yidit aji gol at hitakwati gol at kayi gwatli gol at kijuhu chatasa khatqoa sandikatsku aya shit kadekutuatin okaya an kadek butu qukh Ḳukahaa at qaqtuashi aqa awe at wututlehun itqa we hit plain day wutu qukh at wutu atiu qu ir qoneyak qohi at khwagut qakhasatin yashit qaqon qu yuk aqawe qukhde wututaqini wit utat start the way wutatge we in watla na wutus hihi yawahi aqaya ayaha wutin aqanel de wutu qukh Yáay ke khatuti kholsa aitha qua ḥundakihiti de wutu qukh dekha shukwa ak kwan anika shtuk dain khatus ayi atha dakihiti aga akhsani klein Fred Meyer shitihini qu ayike wuti hast tosagu atha has our ya kaq yagi yakwahi darun yagi atjoy atlein atha wutu Yáay wudu Yáay yagi ya wan qanin zacht wasagu nuj qakhande khwaguti haq hasaya dahuni yudosak gol uski ḥundakihiti just dahuni qutzati ḥundakihiti klein qa'a kashukat qutzati golitwasagu chushihuni hekhosagu wasagachtusa wait a kakhwaaq yati awe Wooch idh adnaqi Tlaika qaachjiwu kayani gweil tuyeti basil yudosak ya kayani hin qa'a we gweil tat gweil ataqayati we kashukat khanakawani belta kakhye nasne khatlashachtu ashku was at kakwajuh yach kakwachich yach kakwachich kwasku tlashachtu ashku aqa tlashwe belta kakhe irsane we kashukat ya aqa void with the huni akhantu agut khankani jinkat kajin ayi Yach we kashuke aqa jinkat kadakun yach saqa tlashachtu ashku yach wujahini awe ya kayani ya basil ajawait kashatu helwasaq kwati qo akakwa gwall English ko atlel kadena was ka. Ya tlidzi away ha wuchin yu kawul atki. Because you got tlel akhi was ach. Kushte kwasa yu wasa kakhinach. Hel wasa ko gwall keka when it's it khwa. Yeah, away at Ḳukahaa at ḳundatín. But it's cheese. Yéil Ḳukahaa, Ḳukahaa at Yagud, Ḳukahaa at ḳundatín, Awasa.
Maduchat. Chat sushi kade ḳundatín we kuik achtu sigo.
Okay. Cheese. What is that? Yeah. Adis atse? What's the ḳundatín kaish? Khati achka, you want? Oh, okay. Yeah, khoji Twilight Zone. Yeah, khat wutiin. Okay. Tashdasa ke? Heshwasa uti. At qanukch. All right. Well, we tried on Wednesday. Wednesday, I think we'll have class on Wednesday. It is Kap Yagi, the day after that. There was a Kuik in Sitka over the weekend. It was wonderful. I didn't stay for the whole thing. Apparently, I think I only stayed for half of it.
Yeah, finished at around 2:30, 3 in the afternoon is when it finished.
Yeah, that was 27 hours, I think. So 27 hours. But we flew to Sitka on Saturday, my family and I. We went downtown to look for some food. And then we went to the Kuik and was walking around talking to people with all the things that happen preparing for a Kuik. But we left at about 4:40 in the morning. So we catch the 6 a.m. flight back because we had a funeral to attend yesterday for Leona Santiago. The Tlingit names are Ḳukahaa and Yanwatla. The Kuik was for Ḳundatín, who I didn't really know, but seems like a wonderful person, and Yáay, who I did a lot of work with and spoke a lot of Tlingit with. And it was fun. It was wonderful. They brought out the Yáay and the bib, Yáay Yéil. So my kids and I told the Yéil I forgot a little chunk of it, which is fine, because that part is kind of difficult anyways. Because he has these, in some of the Raven stories, there's these certain phrases that he uses, and like, I think it's kind of important that you say the phrases exactly how the storytellers say them. So like when he's in the whale, there's, I think, 3 really important phrases, maybe 4. And so the first one is when he starts to talk, he says, and what is that? I'll take a note so that we can see. I actually probably have too many things open too, so hold on. Okay, let me share the screen. So he says, oops. Yak-eyi tleo de nachlahash. here is Yáay, ʼatudli.átk.
Something about cutting him out. Who is it? Who's good enough to cut me out?
Well, that would be harsh as
The
opposed
first
to harsh.
is the first one good?
Good. That's a good beach.
The same Hosh as in Anatla Hosh's name?
It is.
Hmm.
Not quite beach, but
Or sand.
we'll take sand. And there's something else on the sand.
Words?
And now we got Nachla Hash.
Let it drift there.
What's that?
Let it drift.
Yeah. Or float. So when we translate this, we usually say, let it float to a fine sand. Because it has to sound as silly in English as it does in Tlingit. And by silly, I mean it's funny. This is Tlingit humor. So he says this because he's stuck inside this whale. He flew inside it to eat a bunch of herring. He started barbecuing the herring because he was eating all the herring that were coming in. And I think he was like just wanting something different, so he built a fire somehow in the whale. And then he started barbecuing the herring, and that was really yummy. And then because he built a fire, the fat started melting, so he ate that. And then he saw the organs, so he ate that. And then when he ate its heart, he killed it. He thought he'd just walk out, but it was ʼatudli.átk. It was all plugged up at the mouth. And so he started yelling this. And this is a hortative form. So nashahash would be, nashahash would be, it is floating there now, nashahash, as a verb, not as a name. And then you'd say nashahash would be the command form. I guess if you were talking to a piece of driftwood or something and bossing it around, tell it to, I guess you could say it to kids on a raft or people on a raft or something. But this is going to have the qa in it. And then when he gets to the shore, he says, this one's complicated. Aduski ka kanach anqa chash. And he says, ee, it's like real long, but I think it would be like that. Aduski ka kanach anqa chashi.
This was a sentence I was thinking of. Who can cut me out?
Yeah, it's who could cut me out, but if we go through, we see like who, maybe, persons. Kanach, I guess you'd say on through, and then let them cut it. So if you translate this, you end up with something like, who could maybe let them cut over a person? It's very confusing to me. And so there's some other things that go on when Raven talks. I think he uses hortative verbs a lot, and that makes things happen. And he uses very complicated verbs. And so in the story, this decoy comes out of the whale because, well, the people cut a hole in the whale. And then he decides, some things that are pretty consistent through the Raven stories is he doesn't like people to watch him eat because he pigs out. What do I say? Yéil away Yéil. It's like, just real hoggish, which is why it's ʼklep for Thursday. That was the name that Ruth Demert jokingly gave it, which is pigging out day, hoggish day. But then he also doesn't like people to see when, well, he's all messy because he was inside this whale and eating all this stuff. it was all this fat was melting, so he's covered in melted fat and whale blood, and so he sends up this decoy, I think, and the decoy flies past everyone's faces and it turns way up and it starts going, and everybody watches it, and then he flies out and goes the other way, but he can't see because he's covered in blood. So the people say, Kinde Nadakin. What did they tell him? Fly up. Fly up. So he flew way up, and then they said, Khuyach Nadakin, which is wild. This Khuyach, I guess, would mean correct according to the space, but it's fly straight.
Fix your course, maybe?
Yeah, like I think that would work. Like if someone's off course, you know, Khuyach Napuch. I guess you could say Khuyach Nasapuch. Well, okay. So Nakuch would be the command form for drive. And then Naspuch would also be drive. But they're a little different. I guess this would be go by car or boat and drive the car, boat. So it does there's a little bit of a difference there. Okay, so then he cleans himself up. He flies over the. Do you have a question?
What word did they use for decoy?
They never said. I don't think in all the versions they said, and then it. They just say it. It flies out. But I think it's a decoy because when you look at the stories, everybody looks at it, and it's saying Khane, which is where my name comes from, and then he takes off. But then they see him because I think he wanted them. And I don't even know what it was. But maybe it was just him because in some translations they say it's just another name for raven. But in a lot of the stories, like he sends that thing up, and then he flies out. But I've gotten a duck decoy, but that was a different word. I think it was ʼatudli.átk. What is that? I have it in the dictionary. Ḳundatín ʼatudli. And this is the verb. Ḳundatín means to entice something over. And this pops up in the Raven stories. We're working on a Yéil right now. And he says this sometimes. And he'll say something like, Wasa ushirtsane an kan kadutlit. What can I do? What could I possibly do to entice that thing to come over here? Okay. So then he comes back, and let me just find one of these versions, because this is the one where we should look at how the speaker says it, because I'll misremember parts of it. Let's see. This version. I'll try Susie James. I think this book is coming out early next year. It'll look a lot different than this draft version, the Raven book.
Could we be seeing it right now?
Yeah, thank you. Oh wait, let's do Yakhwantla. So this is Catherine Mills. And so the book, I don't know what the book will look like when they put it out, they being Sealaska Heritage Institute. My suggestion was to divide it into what we call Yéil, which I think someone asked about recently. Ḳukahaa is a cycle of stories. And those stories combine to sort of make one big story. Like who was the person? Was it the Odyssey? Where like they fight the Cyclops and then they ran into the Sirens and then whatever. And so like you could say each one of those could be an individual story. Like, let me tell you how this person defeated Medusa or whatever. But then collectively, it's a cycle. And so a cycle of stories, and usually each storyteller will be like, this happened, then this happened, then this happened. And so there's a few cycles in Tlingit. Yéil is one of them. Who's the other one? The Ḳukahaa. That's another cycle where it's like there's a certain sequence of things that happens. So we have, well, the Dowenhauers, Nora and Richard, had gathered these collections of Raven stories, and it never ends. You go out, find a whole bunch more if you want to. But there's Cochain Francatalio, with Shungu Kedi from Yakutat, recorded in the 1950s. Probably born in the 1860s. Kaskei Susie James, who's Ćukansha from Ḥuna, recorded in, let's see, '60s by her daughter, Ḳukahaa Mary Pelayo. There's Shadagh, Robert Zuboff, several recordings made in the 1970s. I think mostly by Nora. There might be one. I think there was one that was transcribed and translated and the recording was lost. It might have been recorded by someone else. Nakashan, Frank Dick Sr., recorded in the 1980s by, I guess this one isn't. Oh, here it is. Okay. Recorded by Ḥundatín, Fred White, Donawak, Austin Hammond, who's Ḥukahaa from Ḥkut. That should be a low tone on Ḥkut. And this was recorded in the radio station in Haines in 1985. And Yaquantla, Catherine Mills, Ḥakdain Tan from Ḥuna. And hers was recorded in the late 80s by one of her nieces, Kashyat Edna Belardi Lambo. So I'd sort of organized these according to when they were recorded. So it goes oldest to newest, and it starts out with these cycles. And so each of them tells a series, and they're different. Some of them tell them all in a row, and others, these are a series of different recordings. And so when you look at this Yéil story, and I'll put a link to this text up so you folks can see it, there's errors in it. When he comes back, I think this one has a pretty good version of it. So he comes back and he says, oh, Yáay Klein Ayayi, he killed a huge whale. And they said, Clag, Clag, no, it was we didn't kill it, it was a blessing that was brought to us. It drifted ashore. And then he says, did you hear anything inside? And they said yes. And there's other versions. I guess I want to switch to a different version. So here's, maybe it's in the Susie James version, which is really fun to like study all these because you could sort of, sometimes I put them together in my brain and I try to like remember all the different ways people said this. So here's Khane. And then there's a song with it for this one, which is kind of interesting, right? And so here he comes back. Or sometimes that's how you say there's a proverb. There's like a certain saying in some of these stories. The hair was dripping from the roots with oil. So this one he comes back, he's like, whoa, this whale, and they said, we found it. Then he says, he said, and so lots of question markers, lots of other things, and so could And so ge pops up here 3 times. So he's saying, did anybody hear anything inside that whale? And then he says, perhaps where that you could really analyze some of this stuff. And then there's another version where he says, is there no way anybody heard something say, ʼatudli.átk, and that part of the story is really funny because in some of these versions he'll say, did you hear anything in this whale? And they'll be like, no. He's like, did anybody maybe hear anything from inside that whale? And they'll say, no. They'll say, is there any way anybody heard something saying, who could cut a person out of this whale? And they're like, oh yeah, we heard that, right? So it's like usually the 3rd time. And as they ask, like the grammar and the way he says it gets more and more complicated. Anyways.
So I had a question about when he's saying, can you cut above a person? What he's really asking is, can anyone cut higher than a person up on the whale?
Well, kanach just means to go over. So it kind of depends. Because kanach could be like, I'm going to go over the top of this mountain. I'm going to walk over it. And kanach could also be, we flew over the mountain in an airplane. And so it really means to go over. And so kanach awahash would be they cut over a person. So it's a very weird, because kina would be above, right? So you could say, if I was in a whale, and I'd say, ach kina nachash, cut up above me, and then I could, but I don't know how I'd want to get out. I guess I'd cut right in front of me. I don't even know what I'd say. It's interesting. Okay. Any language stuff you folks been thinking about? Any questions?
I had a question about how to say last week. I came with it. Ashukat sandikach. Sandikach.
Yeah, okay, so let's see. So there's ways to say like, let's see, let's go back to our notes. So usually if I say, let's pick yakutan. So that would usually be this summer. And then ite kutan would be this coming summer. And then kya kutan would be the other summer. So has anybody heard how to say like the last week or last month or last summer?
She gave us yeast,
Say it again.
yeast, like Y-E, I don't know. I don't know how to spell it. Yeah.
Like this?
But she says talc et.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's right. So people do say talk et for summer in some places. And then they'll say something different for spring. And in other places, talk et is the spring and kutan is the summer. And I think
says ḳukahaa
yeah,
for spring.
ḳukahaa would be like it's kind of the land is frozen, I guess. And then talk et. But one of the reasons why I think in the inland people don't say kutan is because it means fish jumping in the area. And they don't use that verb for fish to jump, as far as I know. They'll say ʼatudli.átk wechat, which people on the coast would not say. Because we'll say, well, fish jumps with the fish jump, not with the person jump. So as far as the other, well, I would say kliya sandekak. But this is, I actually don't know, I don't have clarity on this one. It seemed like I asked someone. Anybody else hear anything for like last year or last month or last week? could probably say way, kutan. You could, oh, so
I'm a
next,
bit curious as to why itikutan would be a coming summer. For me, it would seem like it should be more like this fall. You know, the leftovers of the summer.
yeah, ita is the next one. Because it's the one in the, it's technically like the ones in the remains of this one. So this one will be over, and then there'll be another one in the remains of that one. That's just kind of how Tlingit looks at that.
Look, makes no sense to me, but oh well.
Yeah, that's sort of like, we're following our ancestors who are in front of us, and then and then if we look way out in front of us, we can see where our descendants are, I think. I don't understand that one either. You could say, yeah, I wonder if you could say shuwahihi, Sunday. This would be this week that has passed. I'll have to check. I'll see what some speakers think, and I'll check my notes, see if I can. I feel like I asked this question, and this is one of the questions I feel like I haven't gotten an answer yet. So if you know speakers, go ask them how to say last week,
Okay.
last month. Huh?
I'm just looking at our textbook. I was wrong. It's Yidat Tauk is what she gave us for last year. Yidat Tauk Ḳukahaa for last spring. Yidat Tauk Et for last summer.
Wow.
That's what she gave us.
So you'd have Yidut talk for last year?
Yeah. And then this was next month. Oh, last month was weird. It's Ḥawakisi
Okay, so that's for a month to pass.
Okay.
So then that would be the month that passed. Okay, so say it one more time.
I can spell it for you too. Ḥawakisi. It's Kaawaki high tone S pinched I space AA dis.
So kawakisi would be, but that's just for a month, I think. I think that's
Yeah, that's last month it says.
So then I think you could say shuwahihi, Sunday last week. And this is where I think it sometimes has some of these questions where it's like, how do you do this thing? It's like, well, it depends what the thing is, right? And this is, I think, one of those examples. So shuwahihi could work for last year, I think, because a year can shuwahi, a week can shuwahi, a month should kawakis, and a day should yawahi. Or it could yawahi. But then you don't need that one because you've got tatke. At least that one has its own thing. Okay. That's a good
I
question.
wonder how much of the difference is because the pre-contact Tlingit really didn't have a calendar in the way that we think about it.
Yeah, I don't think you talked about things in such dissected forms of time. And so now you've got to push the language to, and it can, like there's ways to do it, but it's going to be a lot like, we still have to come up with half a teaspoon. And so quarter of a teaspoon, like we could do it. I think you say shach for a tablespoon, shach yadi for a teaspoon. Then you could say shach yadi shuwu for half a teaspoon, and shach yadi kiki shuwu for a quarter of a teaspoon. So now you can make anything. That's a,
I was going to ask something similar.
okay.
Like the exact, I think the same question, just take.
Oh, yeah.
How would we, other than this, would we have broken up time?
Yeah, I think it would be, I think you would say last though, because there would be situations where they'd say last year there were more fish. Last year we harvested this different. Last year we went to this place for berries, so we're going to go to this other place. But I don't even know if they would use that. They would just say, we already went there, we'll go here, and this is different than before. And it's interesting too, because there was a collective memory, but that collective memory seemed a lot more like in the moment than keeping a farmer's almanac of like, but some of that stuff, they'd probably say there was one year where it was this way, or there was, but when they come to like specific events, it's really interesting because then it moves into these broad spectrums of like concepts of time, which is like the now is generally yidat, but Yesu is also now, and then chak, which is long ago, but we all somehow we remember the details, and then kagu, which is we know it happened, but we don't know, like you can't remember details about it. You just collectively know that it happened, like the flood and living on mountains, and so that's how you sort of divide time up. But I don't know if it really goes super far forward though. They'll say, and this is where like these two phrases are really good to know, nache and nase. Have we talked about these? One is they have, yeah, they have a the conjugation prefix just built in there for some reason. So here's some other funky verb mode that's very rare, but what you do have is the conjugation prefix and a plus I classifier. It has to be there. Qadlan is another one for something to be deep. So a lot of these distance ones will use the conjugation prefix and a plus I classifier. Okay, sorry. Someone said the translation of this, nache.
It's far.
Oh,
Yeah. Oops. Nache. What about nase?
It's close.
And I think about what is talk? Usually gonna have a talk.
is this the same as in hintak?
Yeah.
Or is that hintak?
Oh, it's hin talk. Yeah. It's this.
Next to.
That would be talk.
At the bottom of it?
It can be. What that would usually be ҭaka.
Deep?
What's that?
Was it deep?
You could say, well, so you could say, okay, we'll do deep. I don't want to do this. Okay. So you could say a tade. I think you just say tade. Nashe. Deep to the bottom. So this is, it's like a cavity or a container. And so this is where, these are these sort of like fine tooth sort of things where you like take a look at this stuff and like really think about the way Tlingit looks at some of these things. And then it pushes us to think about how things work, whether it's ka or yik or ta. And it kind of depends. So if it becomes sort of a cavity, it's ta, but like to the bottom of the cliff or like the bottom of the tub. And so it really kind of means going into some sort of big container type of thing, I guess. But it's interesting. So I would say talk would be in a cavity. And tade nache would be like a deep bucket or a deep well or a deep, you could say tade nache for like a canyon, you know, tachunach tade nache way, Grand Canyon, like it's a real long ways down. And this stuff gets real, because then if you want to say long ways to the top and stuff. So we should talk a little bit about what's that do a sock? Yeah, ḳeqa achsani claim decide owe chwesaku do ish Shotridge Ḥukahaa. What's that do a sock? Lingit kleina chwesaku Louis Shotridge isakuge you klingit sai Ḥukahaa Ḥukahaa do a sock do ish Shotridge at away Shotridge Ḳudatín Qanachti Yeti Owe Louis Shotridge Cobb Wanton Ḥusati Shittihini at the way Ha'ani Dach Akawa Jechwe Akawa Jail we museum a Yide Owe Konachau Shagukha Hayukatangi Ka Hayukatangi Dato Akawashid Yiwakshi Ek Pasane do Yejni Khetka Ach Khuni Adaye Jituane. We'll take a look at some Louis Shotridge notes. I'll put these up as well. There are these little cards. I guess we'll look at I'll show you what one of these cards looks like, and then I'll show you this list. And just so we could, every now and then we got to take a little break from the heavy verbs and just look at like some other conceptual stuff in Tlingit, because I think it's important to get a whole like picture of the language. So Louis Shotridge did a lot of work in Tlingit. He died unfortunately too young, or else would have a lot more. He was working on a dictionary. He did work with Boaz to talk about Tlingit grammar, and then he's got these things. So like, how would we spell this word right here? So this is large or great.
Would it be like a gay EI?
Yes. So Yáay with a long high vowel. And he's marking it. This is how he marks a long high vowel. So you've got the line over the top, long, and you've got this little thing, high. And he's very accurate, right? And so once you know how he's writing Tlingit, you could sort of retranscribe it, you know. And so if you say, okay, here's something. So here's, how would we say this one?
Yegugeng.
Yegugeng. So here's his, again, high, long vowel, accurate, G-U. It might be a G-U-O-O. I don't know. Long, high vowel, accurate. Then he is marking, so I think the K with an exclamation point is the ejective, which we would mark with an apostrophe. So if that's small, and so our formula here is going to go Yegugeng, Yegugenki-a, the small one, Kach Yegugeng, so a capital L is a TL, that's how we would write it, and then Ḳudach Yegugeng. And this is the path, or this is the way he's going to present a lot of these concepts. He's going to go, like it'll be Yagay, Yagay-a, Kach Yagay-a, Ḳudach Yagay-a, or you know, or something like that. But for this one, Ḳudach Yegugeng, and you notice at the top he had also written Ḳukahaa. Does anybody know what Ḳukahaa is?
I know it's someone's name, part of someone's name. But
Oh, there are names with that on there. I know someone named Ḳukahaa.
Ḳukahaa.
Yeah. So this one would follow. So this, like, I think he sort of developed this, I don't know, he had a bit of a formula. So he's going to say, I'm going to say Yáay, I think it says ḳukahaa, and I think he switched the verb here. But you say ḳukahaa, and then you ḳundatín. You could say ḳundatín, I think, but there's actually a verb, ḳukahaa, which means too small.
What's that letter he's using for the ḳ?
So this is a Q with like a little curly thing on here. And if we looked at other cards, we would see, let me just grab a different one. And we'll see like this, he's pretty consistent. So, Yáay. So I think he's writing this as, I think he's marking that as high. Ḳundatín is the length.
Be a difference between a lowercase a and an uppercase a.
Yeah, I think that's how he's marking a short high. So here you've got Yáay, the long one, ḳukahaa, the longest one, ḳundatín, too long. But it's wild when you look at this stuff, and I'll show you. We don't have to keep. His handwriting is pretty good, but here's what it looks like. So going through it, so he starts with weight. You've got ḳundatín is the weight of something. Yáay, ḳukahaa, ḳundatín, and ḳundas. So here's another one where there's, to say light, there's a different verb for it, right? But it's wild because you go from an L to an S, just like nașe and nase. So like the more you study Tlingit, the more you sort of just see all these patterns. Didakhi, and some of these change when you have plurals, which gets wild. Anyways, it's fun stuff. I think this is where I thought of this because you also have like large in diameter. Like we have ways of talking about a lot of really interesting stuff to be narrow, big around, small, narrow, spherically large, spherically small, hoop-like and large, that's wild, hoop-like and small, a large opening, for an opening to be large or small. Then we've got for a bag or something to be large or small, or a person. And for something to, this is where, I don't know what he means by this. Breadth, comprehensive, not liberal. So also like people just spoke English differently. Or maybe he's too smart in either language for me. And so, kuwuchu. And anyways. So then you've got width, narrow, wide, narrow. And you folks can go through this. And then with this is here where we get into deep, tade nashe, and like a deep tade kunase. And then this is, oops, this is shallow, sorry. Fixing it as we go. Say shallower, more shallow. Now you could say qudach tade kunase. It's shallow. It's too shallow. I don't want to take my boat over there. Then we get thick. Oh, there's shallow. What do I got here? Okay, I don't know. Maybe I didn't finish this. Okay. I got confused in some areas. Thick, flat, deep. So here's deep, like snow or a body of water. And then here, where this is where, again, like, so your body of water would change. Now you'd say, qudach ḥukatān. thick, thin, height, dach, qash. That's so wild. Like some of the stuff is like, I don't think you could ever guess it. You have to remember this stuff and get these categories in your mind. Qudach, dach, qash. It's too high up there. Looks like I have to finish this. Oh, okay. Kuwat, long, short. Long for an opening, short for an opening. Heavy, light. Heavy spherical stuff, light spherical stuff. There was another one where it's like tall to the top. I'll have to find that one some other time, but that's probably enough for now. Categories for 1,000.
So is it comprehensive but not liberal? I think I would take that as like just enough, but it's not like it's like just shallow enough.
Well, several times he notes, like when he says, when we're talking about this measurement, we're talking about comprehensive, not liberal. Like it's in there on several cards. I don't know what that means. Yisakuka, comprehensive, not liberal.
Like most of the time, but not anytime.
Right? Like what is a liberal measurement as opposed to a comprehensive measurement? Kinau deqin. It just flew right over me. Anyways, let's do some of our story. Anything else? Any other questions?
Is there anywhere we could access those note cards?
Yes. Yeah. I'll put them on our class page because he also has, like, he was working on a dictionary, you know, so he's got these word lists. Whoops. Let me find it. So there's cards on like, and so in some of these too, he's typing them. Like, so I do think, and I've been in talk with actually someone who's at the Ḳukahaa, who works at the Penn Museum, about trying to retype all of this stuff, which would be a pretty comprehensive project. But like if someone, like this stuff, so if you go to upper lip, it looks like you have ḳash, and then the lower lip, I don't know how to, ḳata, the mouth of the bay. I think those are ta. Ḳaka is in your mouth. Did you guys know that? Ḳaka. It's in my mouth. Why would ḳaka be in your mouth? I used to think it would be ḳatu, but it's not. Do you recognize, if I said ḥaka is made up of two parts, ḥa and ka. Do we know what ka is?
On it.
On. Do we know what ḥa is?
It's at the top.
That'd be ḥut. If you change the vowel of ḥa, it's going to go to ḥlay, like in ḥlaytuch. Do we know ḥlaytuch?
It's neck, right? Is it neck?
Well, ḥlaytuch is throat, and
Well, Slaytuch is throat, yeah, but
so ḥa is neck. So ḥaka is on the neck, which is in your mouth. Look, that stuff is so wild. I think it's so fun. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, washtu, I knew that one. Washke, the inside of, like, this is stuff. It's wild. There's ḥlaytuch right there. Nutai. Wow. The corner of the mouth. Ḳata. I mean, this stuff is very useful. And like, if only he had lived longer, I think we'd have like some pretty comprehensive stuff right now. I mean, we still do, but he's also, it's a complicated, like he took a lot of stuff out of communities. I mean, if you try and, well, I guess in English you could say it's a glass half full or half empty thing. But in Tlingit, you just say a katut. It's to the middle of the container. And so we can look at it like from, I guess you could still translate that. It's halfway. I don't know. Anyways, it was a long weekend. Sorry, I'm very tired.
Une, I have a language question.
Ah,
Beth and I were meeting up. We were pulling apart verbs in a story, and I couldn't identify a part of a verb.
what's the verb?
So the sentence was gat due to wasigu uahai, and it was part of the uahai part, and it was the u. I couldn't figure out what the u was doing.
Like this? Okay. Well, what's interesting, so you would say ḥukahaa, or you'd say ʼawaha. And what is ʼawaha? How would we translate ʼawaha?
They ate it.
Yes. And then if we break this apart, we get a, y, 0, ya, ha. And just a couple things to note, like this is a long high stem. That's just something we should just look at and say, okay, it's long and high. It's long and high. Because we're going to talk about perfectives a bit on Wednesday and really start thinking, we're going to shift from like talking about all the verbs and the parts of the verbs to saying like, we got to like get our hands on this perfective so that when this semester ends, I should be able to give you any verb theme in the world and you'll give me the perfective of that. You should be able to do that, but we'll talk about that too. It's not like you have to do it right now. But this is long and high because it's a zero conjugation verb. That's just the law. That's how it goes. This is the object, so we'll go through. So get our little color chart out. And this is going to be blue. And this will be gray. And this will be purple. Oops, not purple. Red and purple. Just so we can sort of see what all those parts are, right? And we don't, and I know color coding is not going to work for everybody. It can be pretty handy though, I think. So then if we take this thing, and if we put clash in front of it, and I'll put clash down here, what has to change? Do we know what has to change now? I could think of 3 things that need to change.
Classifier and adding the arrows.
Classifier, and how does the classifier change?
It loses it.
Minus I.
So it goes to 0. And then what else?
Perfective marker.
The perfective marker is there, but we have to add the irialis. They just pretty much combine. If those two are there, they'll just turn into one thing. That's just how it goes. And then this should go low. So there's our 3 changes. Some of those things, it'll take a while to remember, but you have to remember that this needs to go minus I. It needs to. And you're actually going to get ʼawucha. And so this is what you should get. Tesh ʼawucha. They didn't eat it. So what Tlingit likes to do is when it ties two things together. One of the most common ways it could do it is you say verb, let's see how it's verb 1, that verb 2. So it is verb, that verb. So verb 1 is the first one, however it is. And the second one, that this verb happened, right? So what we're going to end up with is this one, we should say ʼawuchayi. So for whatever reason, the pattern seems to be that we take the negative perfective and we add the letter I onto the end. Well, we add a suffix onto the end. And so you could say du, tuwa, siku. I would expect ʼawuchayi as opposed to ʼuwachayi, but it could be just something is changing in it there. And so,
Did anyone else just lose the notes screen, or is my Zoom just being weird?
I can still see it.
so then, like you say, ausiku. This is another zero conjugation verb because we see it long and high. And how do we translate ausiku?
And no, they know.
They know it, right? So we have to get that. And let's see, it's just grab. So now we've got ausiku, and we're going to do the same thing. So here we've got.
Before we jump in there, where'd the you come from? Is it a speaker preference?
For the reason they said uwa,
Uwahai.
I would expect ʼawuchayi. And it's when it would go to uwa as opposed to awa, I don't know why they would do that. And so
I wonder if it's a spelling mistake.
it's like where was the phrase at?
It's in the Skepnik story, how Raven lost his eye, part 1 in our Skepnik textbook.
Is it because it's not a transitive?
Well,
They it, but they just ate the fish.
if we listen to the recording, we might hear awu. But if we hear uwa, there could be something going on there that I'm not really sure about.
Okay. I'm gonna listen to that recording.
Okay, because we do get, so in a zero conjugation verb, you can get uwa gut. Like, I would expect uwa gut. So like you could say, ne uwa gut, they came inside. But you would get ne they wugut. They went home, or I guess they went towards home, and they came inside. So this one is na conjugation. So that's where you get uwa, is usually from it being a zero conjugation verb in the perfective without an object. Because once you add the object, it should go to awa. But what's interesting is that you say tlech, nech, wugut. They didn't come inside. And then you could say tlech, nech, de, wugut. So those ones, they are identical. The negative perfectives are identical for these. They didn't go towards home. But we remember, like this is a formula, it's a pattern building formula. Take the negative perfective, and now you could say Yáay, nech, copy, paste. Add the I, whoops. And once I add the I, that's going to change this to a D. Yáay, nech, wugudi. How would we translate that?
Did they came inside?
It's good that they came inside. And then Yáay, Yéil, they, same thing, copy. Well, we'll just copy and paste this one. It's good that they went towards home, right? And so you could put any two verbs in combination using this kind of formula. And for now, you can look up the negative perfective, but once you learn how to build a negative perfective, you could do, so, you know, I used to tease with someone, and I'd say, Klesh, ach, well, how do we say that? Klesh ushke satini. Not a nice thing to say, but so now you've got, but the same thing. So you'd say, sitin, I saw you. Klesh satin, I didn't see you. So we could copy, you know, we know how to do this stuff, but we don't always know the patterns. We know how to say yáay. We add that letter I, we add that suffix, and now we've got that relational form. So this is, it's good to see you. So what would klesh ushke satini be?
It's terrible to see you.
It's terrible to see you.
It is evil to see you.
Yes, it is, yes. And so I first tested this, you know, because when we were like, there's a group of us that were at Ḳut at a language camp in 2000 and, I think it was 2005. Ḳukahaa, Nora Marks Dowenhauer was there, Ḳanak, Ruth Demmert was there, Yáay, Mary Anderson was there, Ḳukahaa, Johnny Marks was there, Ḳukahaa, Paul Jackson was there, Ḳukahaa, Joe Hotch came there, Tunk, Smitty Katzig went there. They came to visit. They weren't there the whole time. Kingisti, David Katzig was there. I was trying to make sure I remembered all the speakers that were there. But it was such a wonderful time. And at this time, someone was teaching me this. And I was like, this is the formula? This is how it goes? And I said, I think so. And so, just to test it out, there was an elder named Ḳanak who tolerates my sense of humor, who was walking by. And I said, Ḳanak. She said, Dasa. And I said, tu yáay jin unigu. And I was like, I was just testing it. Tu yáay jin unigu. And she goes, ja. And she grabs her hand and says, ja. And so I was like, okay, it works. And then I needed to make sure that I communicated to her that I was just kidding and I was sorry. But now you could tie any two. It's really neat to be able to do this. But this tying together, this formula is if or that. That's it. It's not like when this happens, this other thing happens, or it only works for like if and that, right? It's good that you know that. But this is where it's important to know how the verb changes when it goes negative. So here you've got the perfective marker. You've got this still. This goes to si, and this goes to ku. And then, if I put klesh in front of here, what three things need to change?
Root or stem goes low.
Well, in this case, actually, I think I did this wrong. Klesh awo. Wait, let me check my work and find my mistakes. Yeah, short and high. Whoopsie. And so even though this is awacha, so now we get introduced to this. So if you go awacha, awacha, and here you're going to do that. So if we go awacha and we add ye to it, this now invokes one of the Tlingit suffix rules, which is if you put a suffix on a short high vowel, that will now change awacha ye, and it will flatten it, which will then turn the suffix high. So I do think you would have awacha. And so just like this, so this should go to k. What are the other two changes?
Does the SI turn to an SA?
Sa.
Oh, you add a U.
So then how does this, so here's another, like when we get into these prefixes. Sa, cha, and sha. These classifiers, okay, I guess here's my metaphor for this. If, I heard that if a sloth drops its baby, it will not go get the baby. Isn't that sad? It's like, well, bye, baby. And so this is like, these will drop this vowel. And there's a list of things that will cause it to drop that vowel. But if either the aerialis or the perfective marker comes right before that classifier, it will drop its vowel like a sloth leaving its baby on the ground. So with that, we're going to have kesh. How do we say this? Does anybody know how to say this? Oh, it's in the chat. That is correct. So this goes to w because that vowel gets dropped. It has to get dropped. You cannot go wussa. Tlingit will not allow that. It just will not. It says that vowel has to go. So here it is. So you say awus k, and it has to be kesh awus k. That has to be the negative form of it. And so because you know that, oh, let me make a note here. So these will drop that vowel. I know this little character that works for that. So then you'll end up with,
You have to create a new verb, sloth. It'll sloth that vowel.
that's right. And so now that you know how to do that, you could say Yáay, or you could say ach tuwa segu awaskuwu. And how do we translate that one?
I want them to know it.
I want to know it.
I want them to know it. And you can also say Yáay awaskuwu, right? Kashach tuwa ushka awaskuwu. I don't want them to know, right? Like knowing these sorts of formulas, my recommendation is like understand how the formula works. You can go to any of these verbs that have been documented for us already. So we'll just go grab a verb. Keshke wushtuk. Yáay keshke wushtuku. It's good that it didn't explode. What was this one? Here's the negative. Kesh ada yutu yitan. You didn't think about it. Yáay, or gunachish ada yutu yitani. Thank you for thinking of it. You could tie any two verbs together that you want. So here we have Klesh Keudashid. Achtu Yanik Keudashidi. I'm sad that they gave it up, that they quit. Right? And so it takes a little bit of sort of adjustment, but the one thing you're doing here is well, I guess the two things. You're dropping the klesh, you're adding the suffix. That's how you change the second verb in that little formula. I don't want you to quit. I don't want you to give up. I'm mad that they were snoring. Well, anyways, I snore.
How do you, so if you're using not a third person verb, would you just take like the I didn't do it? Is that how you would form that?
Wait, say the question again.
So like if maybe I'm happy that you didn't, so that you snored or whatever. If you're not talking about a third person, if you're talking like I'm happy that I don't know, got a present for Christmas, whatever.
Right. And so this is where we need to figure out how to, so if we said awakit, so this would be they didn't snore. So then you could say klesh chwakit and klesh yakit and klesh, I forgot one. So this is the next step, is knowing how to do these things. Klesh wutu keet. Klesh yakit. Klesh yi keet. Klesh has awukit. Oh, hold on. Achwa. This one's tricky because it has the built into it. And then you should be able to say klesh adu keet. Adu keet. No. So the key is sort of like, and but we do have lists of these. And where are these lists? They're in several places. So some of these, let's start with what is maybe the most comprehensive, but also kind of complicated one. So this is a book which I think we should look at it and know how to use it and be comfortable with it, because I think it's incredibly useful. And I was excited when this book first came out. So this is a handbook made by Wooch, James Crippen, and it's called the Crippen Verbal Structure Handbook. It's organized into these, it's got a whole bunch of information put together in a pretty short book. It's like a 30-page thing. But there is this section here, I'm going to drift down. It goes through an awful lot of stuff. We don't have time to look at the whole thing right now. But then it goes through these prefix tables. And once you learn how to read this, like this table here gives you every future prefix that you can put together. They're all right there. But you have to learn how to change these things. Like this capital C means that's a consonant. So that means you could say ḳukasaku, I will know it. ċahtusaku, we will know it. ċahisaku, y'all will know it. And it does show us how to do that. And so one of them is going to be this one, which what we're looking for is the negative of the perfective. And then this is where you say kesh chwasaku is this one. Kesh watusaku, that one. Kesh yisaku, kesh yisaku. And then you jump over to this. Well, it doesn't always show you all of them because you don't get awus on there. But the place you can is in the conjugator. So some of this, so that's why I say for now, like look up the verb. in the database. But then the section you're going to go to is the negative, imperfective, and future. So here you would go down to, you need to know, this is going to, okay, let's use this, okay? Sewing. Keshwadaqa, keshwatudaqa, keshyadaqa, keshyidaqa, keshwudaqa, because there's no there's no object in that verb. Keshwudaqa. So now you've got achtuwu yakechwadaqai. I'm happy I was sewing. Achtu yakewutudaqai. I'm happy we were sewing. And so the stem would be short and high, but now we put a suffix on it. Achtu yakeyidaqai. Achtu yakewudaqai. Achtu yakewuduqai. So, like, but it is putting, like, it's multiple things you're sort of putting together at once. And so I would say your starter pack is just look up that negative perfective for verbs that are already written out. But then you say, oh, well, I want to say it's good that you know it. Yak'e yisaku. And this is where you can look in here. It's an S classifier, 0 conjugation verb. Kesh yisaku. Yak'e yisaku. Gulchish. Wooch in shtitel tu. Achtu yak'e dan. Naskiki khana tsu wush kadachkach tu da'an. It's like Naskiki khana tsu wush kadach kegach tu da'an. So you got to remember this stuff about a verb. So that verb to gather, it's a great verb to use. And sometimes, like, even if you've been doing this for a while, you will forget, you're like, wait a minute, is that verb to gather? Here it is. This is gah conjugation. That means in the future, it needs to have K in front of it. On Wednesday, we will gather again. Naskiki khana wushka nach kekach tu da'at. Yéil. Gulchish.
Sí, Justin.
I have a question. Have you sent that thing with the permission for me going into advanced Klingit 2?
No, I'll send it to you. Cheese for the reminder.
Thank you. Tiene quasi.
Yeushkach Justine.